Lucius Seneca, 1 BC to 65 AD, one of the leading Roman Stoic philosophers. So, as I said, he was a Roman philosopher. He was from Spain. Rome had obviously spread throughout much of Europe. He's considered the greatest, or among the greatest of Stoic philosophers. He focused a lot on expectations and on anger. Just like the other Stoic philosophers, they tried to get you to use reason, to think, rather than just flying off on our crazy emotions. But anger especially was an area of focus. He was the tutor for Nero. Nero was one of the crazy Roman emperors who actually ordered him to kill himself because he was part of a plot. So Seneca himself didn't have a great ending, but in regards to the philosophies he put forth, kids find them quite useful. We suffer more often in imagination than in reality. He has this quote a couple different ways, but think about it. The worst case scenario that pops into our head. If you're scared of the dentist or the MRI machine, if you think about it for the next 30 days, it's going to suck a lot worse than the actual 30 minutes you're at that place. And we'll come back to this concept again. Expectations and hope. If you remember, day one, first slide, we got right into it with expectations. Your expectations that you choose to hold in your head become a model for what life must do in order for you to be happy. In other words, life must cooperate. Everything has to be just exactly perfect according to the model in my head. Otherwise, I'm going to be upset. We set ourselves up for failure. If you think the party's going to be the greatest thing you ever went to, you're very likely going to be disappointed. The Stoics believe that too foolish, too hopeful expectations are just going to set you up for a bigger fall. If you're foolish enough to buy a lottery ticket every week, and every week when you buy that lottery ticket, you're foolish enough to think that you're going to win this week, this is the week, then each week you will suffer because of this expectation. When we begin to accept, according to Seneca, that we don't have as much control as we think, then we can be more prepared for whatever happens. In other words, we really want life to cooperate because, you know what, it's got to be fair. And when it doesn't, rather than actually roll with the punches, we tend to get angry and full of emotions that are only there because our expectations were too foolish in the first place. The rich in anger. One thought that Seneca had is, you know what, rich people get a lot angrier. Now, I don't know if this is true. It's probably depending of whether or not you're rich or poor is going to determine your view on this. But he said people who are wealthy, who've got the bucks, they've got more expectations because they've been spoiled. In other words, I might not be worrying about the type of soap or the type of towels at the hotel room, but because I don't go to hotels a lot. But if somebody who's used to 5-star hotels, their expectations are going to be a lot different than mine, and they're more prone if they don't get the right sort of shampoo or conditioner. Poor people, you know what? Hopefully over time, our expectations have been lowered. We're not as angry, potentially, because we expect less out of the world. Now, our anger about the world might unfortunately manifest itself in expectations towards other people, and the anger still exists, but in a big scheme of things, when you think of it, the higher expectations you have, the more angry you're going to be. Anger. When I ask kids what emotion that usually plagues them the most, a lot of kids have anger. It's a lot of times the kid with the wrapped up hand because he just punched his locker because Susie was talking to Clint. Seneca called anger one of the most hideous and frenzied of all emotions. Hideous and frenzied because, you know what? We're the cause of it. You could look at the event that happens and say the event caused it, but really it's our expectations. It's an emotion that can be treated by changing our expectations. Anger arises due to an irrational idea held about the world. If you think your team can't lose, there's no way they're going to lose, and then they lose, you're angry. If you think your team has no chance of winning, and they lose, you're able to deal with it because you've lowered your expectations. Seneca thought that people were fools, and I agree. And the main fault is we have these too optimistic expectations that the world is going to work out. Somebody told us somewhere that life has to be fair or life should be fair, and then we have our large list of grievances when it's not. These are all expectations that allow us to cause our own anger. Most of us get upset about little things like a traffic jam. Here's what Seneca said. You know what? Bad stuff happens. If you're driving in the city or anywhere in a car, you might have a traffic jam. In that moment when you're in that traffic jam, you're angry because you had to get to the important meeting or the dinner date or whatever. And how dare somebody get in an accident and slow your process home? And the question is, if you were in a hot air balloon suspended way above that traffic jam and you were looking down on it, would you have the same chaotic emotions as the person in that car? The person in that car is full of their I, me, mine, and life must cooperate with thine. And that's foolish. The hot air balloon perspective is kind of taking yourself away from the situation and asking yourself, is maybe it possible that bad stuff happens like this? Should I be angry, or is life going to do what it's going to do? It doesn't really ask for permission, and we then react angrily when it does what it's going to do. If you get angry about what life has done, your expectations about the world are warped. And Seneca felt if we could just be more realistic, we wouldn't be so disappointed. Anger is caused by the violent collision of hope and reality. Now, I don't think you should go through life with no hope. I don't think you should go through life with this, oh no, bad things are going to happen. Now, if you did, every once in a while you'd be surprised when the good thing happens, but you'd be miserable all the time. Maybe no expectations at all allows us to maybe not have the accident. When we expect or hope too much, we need life to do exactly what we want. We become angry. So to be calmer, you have to expect nothing. That's what the Stoics believed. They didn't say lower your expectations to life is bad, but rather just accept whatever comes. Stoic philosophy is similar in some ways to the Taoist philosophy of Eastern philosophy. Seneca tried to use an image to show how little control we really have in life. And if we can just shift things, maybe we'd have a better understanding. We're like a dog, he said, and we are tied to a chariot by an unpredictable driver. So in this example, which took me a long time to line up the lines, that's skills right there, I make the big bucks. The dog is able to walk wherever it wants to go as long as the chariot is cooperating. And we think we're free. In life, we can do what we want as long as life is cooperating, life being the chariot in our example. Our leash is long enough and we have some freedom. We can go where we want. We can run where we want. Except we're still tied down a little bit to the life experiences of the chariot. As long as the chariot's going in the same way we want to go, we are happy. We are free. But sometimes the chariot says, nope, we're not going that way. Life says, nope, you're not going to have that thing you thought. It's at that point that we, the dog, aren't truly free to do whatever we want. And here's our choice. We can't change the chariot, we're just a dog. But we can change our course and follow the chariot, follow life, or we can be dragged, kicking and screaming. The leash is going to pull us. It's kind of like talking about change. Change, as I say often, it's like a game of tug of war. When that rope is being pulled out of your hands, you can either let go of the rope or you're going to get rope burn. In life, sometimes the chariot changes directions and we have a choice to go along or to fight against. So is it better to realize the power of the chariot or to struggle against it? Many people will fight against what is, and sometimes you can change things. Seneca says, from a Stoic philosophy, an animal struggling against its noose only tightens it. The more you try to fight against what is, maybe Cindy broke up with you and you don't like that. Well, the more you protest, I don't know that that's going to get Cindy back. Maybe at some point you need to, as they say, read the writing on the wall. So if we're represented by the dog, what does the chariot represent? Well, I already told you, that's life. Life's going to do what life's going to do. What do you think Seneca felt we must do when the chariot changes directions. And I would ask at this point, how many people actually will fight against life in the chariot and try to change the course of things through their struggles and efforts? Sometimes it works, but a lot of times it does not. And wisdom is able to know when it's time to cut fish. Let go or be dragged. The more one pulls against what is, the more one is strangled. Sometimes you're better along just going in the direction that life is going to take you. I don't know if this is real, but just mystifies me. Life's going to pull us around sometimes, where we don't have as much freedom as we wish. As you've seen this image 1,000 times, the two ways you could look at life represented by two hands. Do you see the world as it is, or do you see it as you wish it were? If you're focusing on the hand that represents the way you wish life was, you are suffering. If you're able to see the way life is and accept it and work with the pros and cons, the ebbs and flows of what is, you will not suffer as much. The Stoics got this concept across through many of their works. So, some quotations from Seneca. A man is as miserable as he thinks he is. So what does that mean? Well, if you're going to see the world and you're going to see it through a lens that's full of negativity, then all you're going to see is misery. Or if you've got what's called the rose-colored glasses, you're going to not see the bad about something. If your boyfriend is a jerk and everybody can see it, and when he does something bad, you don't see it. In other words, oh, it's so cute the way he just, punted that puppy. That means your eyes are clouded or changed. You're as miserable as you think you are. The way you want to think about life, we can't always fix our problems, but we can definitely make them worse. We can think, oh, woe is me, nothing ever good happens to me. And we can take the fact that somebody didn't call us to go bowling, we can turn it into a big, big drama with how we think. Seneca thought that if we can consciously try to focus by making a positive mindset, and if you can make a habit of this, you can get a permanent shift in your attitude. This is a theme that comes up repeatedly among the different philosophers, but it's so true. There's a video here I would show. It's Bill Burr, the comedian, driving with Danica Patrick, the Indy driver. And Bill Burr, the comedian, asks her, do you ever think about getting in an accident? And, they're going 200 and something miles an hour in a long left turn. And Danica Patrick said, no, thoughts become things. And Bill Burr was talking about how amazing that concept is. But it's true. Thoughts become things. If you think on something long enough, if you think the negativity of something long enough, you're going to create negativity. Now, there are kind of hokey, or maybe not hokey depending on your opinion, things like The Secret, which you may have heard of, whereby you just wish good things to happen and they happen. But there are philosophies which really believe that whatever you think will become your path. And the Stoics, to some degree, realize you don't have control of events, but you have control of how you think. There is no person so severely punished as those who subject themselves to the whip of their own remorse. Remorse means sadness. The person who's most punished is the person who thinks how badly they're punished. We whip ourselves. Buddha talks about the two darts. One dart is what somebody does to us or says to us. That's 1% of the pain we'll ever face. The other 99%, the second dart, is what we do to ourselves through our own guilt and remorse. There are more things to alarm us than to harm us, and we suffer more often in apprehension than reality. Once again, our mind has an ability to create a really creative, scary story about things, and we can go through life fearing life, or we can go through life experiencing life. And a lot of it has to do with our mindset. And this is one of the quotes that I use myself, probably one of the 5 quotes I use myself. He suffers more than necessary who suffers before it is necessary. The example I give in class is when I knew I had to go in for an MRI, and I'm claustrophobic and a large guy to begin with. That was not something I was looking forward to. If I had thought about it for 30 days, I would have been a wreck. But somehow I kept saying this quote to myself every time it popped into my head, and I was able to postpone the horror of getting into a little tiny MRI tube until the very moment before I got into the MRI tube. The idea is those who suffer more than is necessary, it's because they're suffering in apprehension. They're suffering in fear of the future, rather than living in the present. For many men, the acquisition of wealth does not end their troubles, it only changes them. It is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more that is poor. And what difference does it make how much you have? What you do not have amounts to much more. All three of these quotes are pretty deep, and they're all basically calling us out for being materialistic pigs. The idea, if you really think about it, he's right. When I get a lot of money, I can pay my rent, I can buy some cool stuff. That's cool. But then what happens when my cool stuff breaks? I've got more problems. And the idea of ever getting your desire to go away for acquisition, it won't happen. The more you buy, the more you want. And unfortunately, we tend to think by buying something new, we can actually bring ourselves some happiness. And we do. For a period of time, we have utility and we're happy until a week or two later we need to buy something else to cheer us up again. Until we have begun to go without them, we fail to realize how unnecessary many things are. We've been using them not because we needed them, but because we had them. What things can you think about that you probably could go without? The greatest obstacle to living is expectations, which hangs upon tomorrow and loses today. You are planning what lies in fate's control and abandoning what lies in yours. What are you looking at? To what goal are you straining? The whole future lies in uncertainty. Live immediately. Well, let's break this down. In the beginning, we're hanging upon tomorrow and losing today. We're worrying about tomorrow, which isn't here, and when it gets here, it'll be today. But we won't be worrying about it. We'll be worrying about the day after. Today is right now. That's the only time that ever is the present moment. Seneca said we need to stop having thoughts about the future, and when it gets here, we'll be able to deal with it fine. He says you're planning what lies in fate's control. Now, the idea of fate is we don't have that much control. We'll talk about that in regards to predetermination and things of that nature. But the idea is, why are we living in the make-believe world of thoughts that exist in our head rather than the real world, the 24/7 movie that's right in front of us? Having an expectation is the worst way to set yourself up for failure. Winnie the Pooh, Forrest Gump, who are Taoist figures, they also, if you think about their lives, Forrest Gump, for instance, had a lot of bad things happen to him, but he also had a lot of good things happen to them. He didn't ride the roller coaster of emotions. He just went with what was happening in that moment. The mind that is anxious about future events is miserable. It's hard not to plan for the future. Most people spend every present moment planning for the future, but ultimately it's a planning out of fear. True happiness is to enjoy the present without anxious dependence on the future, not to amuse ourselves with either hopes or fears, but to rest satisfied with what we have. A wise man is content with his lot, whatever it may be, without wishing for what he has not. It sounds really cool and all, but if we, and this is where it happens for the members of the class, when the concept of living in the present stops being a theoretical concept and it starts being something you try to apply, when you put all of your focus into this present moment, when you get into that flow state or in the zone like you are when you're on the basketball court or playing in the concert, when you're not in your own way, in your head, but rather you're in the moment, when you start applying that concept, you'll find a lot of peace of mind occurs because your mind isn't plotting and worried about something that's not here yet. A gem cannot be polished without friction, nor a man perfected without trials. A lot of people are, quote-unquote, the lucky ones who've gone through a lot of shite already. And those scars they have, that's the sandpaper of life. And the friction of it is what makes us into who we become. And so when I say the lucky ones, in quotes, those are the people who are not lucky by contemporary, by any means, really. But maybe they have used the terrible things they've gone through, the trials, if you will, to actually make them into the person that's a better person for society. In other words, You go to high school for the curriculum to make you a better person. Maybe life has a curriculum for us, and the overcoming, the polishing, is what makes us a valued member of life.